Good night and good morning, everyone. This is update for May 16, 2022, day 82 of the war, end of the date update. Instead of a strategic discussion, we're gonna have discussion of the Ukrainian environment, nature, and so on, because it affects war conditions. This was the question from one of the viewers, and then we're gonna do walks through the front line. So if we look at Ukraine, it's a country with a typical moderate climate with 4 seasons. So nothing abnormal in terms of climate here. Usually the temperature doesn't go much below -10, and then it won't go above +35 degrees Celsius in the summer. There's typically, the warmest are July and August, and then the coldest usually January. So in terms of climate, in terms of rain distribution and all of that, it's more or less even. There's no rainy seasons or anything like that. It's just usually fall and spring are typical times for the rain, which obviously helps vegetation. So there is not a special problems with ability to drive off-road, with one exception is when the snow melts, and that usually could happen either February or March, depending on the year, right? So that's the only kind of difficult time for off-road driving, for example, for tanks. And we discussed that in probably couple months ago, 2 months ago, probably at this point, that the Soviet tanks were actually engineered in a way that they made worse relative to the famous T-34s that could go very well off-road. They have relatively, not very, but relatively narrow tracks, and so they got stuck frequently. And we have seen that those pictures during early March, where there were a lot of Russian tanks were abandoned because they got stuck in the mud, and that's because obviously the snow was melting, the soil was very soft, and the pressure per whatever square centimeter or per square meter of the surface of the tank was too high, and so it got stuck. So that's just, and both sides use the same tanks, so this applies to both sides. So as we said, there's nothing kind of peculiar or nothing unusual about Ukrainian climate. It's also not humid. It tends to be dry generally. There is no humid season or humid time during the year. The only thing is that, and then Ukraine pretty much doesn't have mountains. It's pretty flat. Terrain. The only mountainous, well, there are 2 mountainous regions. One is here, which is Carpathian mountains here. They're not terribly high, about 2,000 meters above sea level. And then in the very south of Crimea, those are even shorter mountains, about 1,600 or something along those lines. So those are only 2 mountainous regions in Ukraine. The rest is either hilly or super flat, let's put this way. This area that's close to the mountains, it's a little bit more hilly here, this area, in the kind of south, west, I guess, and south. Well, you couldn't say it's southwest, but kind of this area. Then the rest of it is pretty much flat, and it gets flat or super flat. So the south we would call is super flat, this whole area basically. Odessa region, Mykolaiv region, southern portion of this, it's called still Kirovograd region from Soviet time, even the regional center is called Kropivnitsky. Then majority of the Dnipro region, and then most of the Donetsk region, most of the Luhansk region. So it's super flat, and most of the land was converted to agricultural purposes in Ukraine. So it's endless fields of agricultural crops, right? So usually it's typical is wheat, barley, corn, sunflowers, all that kind of stuff. And then in the south, there are more orchards, there is vineyards. So, for example, Kherson region is famous in Ukraine, like a sort of big supplier of all kind of fruits and like vegetables and early vegetables. So, and the same goes true for the south of Zaporizhia region. And then in the Odessa region is famous for vineyards in Ukraine. So that's kind of how the terrain looks. And then in terms of forests, it's mostly here, this kind of like northern part, and then like this, and it's called Polisia region. So this region is mostly like forests, and it's like sandy ground and sandy soil, and so that's in a way different. And there are a lot of there used to be a lot of swamps there as well, so that's somewhat different area. So and then going back to the south, because that's where the most of the fighting is going on. In terms of any other peculiarities, it's usually only the ridges where the rivers are. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, it's very flat, and it's relatively sparsely populated. Let's say relative to the center of the country or west of the country, or like this eastern industrial area. There's not that much population on a relative scale as well, and so there's not much of urban or any kind of like structures of buildings. So there's less of that overall here in the south. So that's kind of quick look at the Ukrainian terrain and nature. And then here in this region where there's kind of like a fighting along the Severodonetsk river, because there is obviously more water, so there are forests there, and mostly those are pine forests here. So that's why you see there's a lot of fighting going on right now here in the forests. And that's because it's along the river, and so you have more water, so you have forests there generally. So now let's actually look at the front lines, and we're going to start with in our usual clockwise fashion. We're going to look at Kharkiv section of the front line, and let's see what's going on there. As we discussed, there isn't much going on here. Ukrainian troops are trying to slowly push out Russian troops. As we mentioned, they pushed them out in this section, and Russian sources claiming that Ukraine preparing attack on village of Kazachya Lopan, which we don't know if that's true or not. Totally possible. And there is also again from Russian sources that Ukrainian troops managed to establish pontoon bridge in the village called Khotomля here. And then the Ukrainian kind of like reconnaissance groups are kind of like scouting around here, this whole area, basically. This is all could be totally wrong, totally bogus, but we just want to share. Beyond that, there's not many changes here. Now let's keep going south. We're going to look at this whole big Donbass salient, and we're going to look at their northern northern pincer, and we call it pincer because Russian troops are attempting to encircle all of these Ukrainian troops in this Donbass salient, and they trying to do the northern pincer, and then they attacking to create the southern pincer, and then the idea is to either encircle all of these troops or force withdrawal towards the west. And so let's just look right now at what's going on in Izyum. This is schematic kind of view, big picture. This is all of the Russian units that are on the Izyum bridgehead, and the bridgehead we call it because it's on the western side of Severodonetsk river. This is Severodonetsk river, so that's why we call it Izyum bridgehead, and this is town of Izyum. And then Ukrainian side is holding as well bridgehead, but on their eastern side of Severodonetsk river, and we call it Lyman bridgehead, right? There is another bridgehead here around town of Severodonetsk. That's Ukrainian side still holding on to. So this is high-level overview. Now let's look at the specific bridgeheads and more detailed. So there's no changes again here today. After capturing village of Dovhinka, Russian side is kind of like on a pause. Probably doesn't have enough fresh resources to continue attacks. So at this point, everything here more or less stable. There is always artillery shelling, you know, the reconnaissance groups attacking and just trying to penetrate. And because the way the fighting is going on here, there is no contiguous front line here. It's kind of built around strongholds around the villages. So that's how it works. So you can easily, you know, we've seen examples of Ukrainian reconnaissance group and sort of like commando groups getting as far as to almost here to Izyum and trying. Then they would set up ambushes and they would attack advancing Russian equipment that goes down south, and then for that reason, Russian side is using this 24th Special Forces Brigade to hunt down those Ukrainian groups, and there is kind of this fight between the both sides, and so there is never-ending fighting here and all of this territory basically. And we mentioned this before. It got to the point that Ukrainian side even using buggies to be able to penetrate and to ambush Russian troops and then quickly retreat back. So there is no changes here. Then there are no changes based on our information on the Lyman bridgehead. Russian side is claiming that they captured a village Drobyshevo. We don't have confirmation of that. As well, that they fully captured village Dibrova. Again, we don't have full confirmation for that. So for now, we keep them as kind of contested areas, and we'll hopefully get more information tomorrow on the situation there. But basic idea for what the Russian side is trying to do here on Lyman bridgehead, they basically would like to encircle this group of Ukrainian troops here in town of Lyman and basically then eliminate them, right? So that's kind of like the point of attack. The axis of attack is towards this Starey Caravan, this village that controls the road, so basically potential retreat road to Ukrainian side. And here this is already being blocked here, as you can see, because Russian side by village Yarova. So this group, basically at this point, this bridgehead effectively split into two pieces, right? This one kind of, let's call it northern piece of it, and then southern piece of it, which is centered around town of Lyman. And this Lyman is about 20 to 30,000 population before obviously the war. So it's sort of kind of like nothing big there. So it's effectively now, obviously, the biggest target is this group here in the south. And so the only sort of parts of retreat for them left is this road that through the village where the village of Starey Caravan is. So the Russian side is obviously trying to cut off retreat routes. That's their top priority right now. But so far, based on our information, they haven't managed to do that. So let's keep going. Let's look at the tip of the Donbass salient, and we call it Severodonetsk salient, where the Russian troops are trying to do another encirclement because it doesn't look they will be able to do anything with bigger Donbass salient because they lack forces right now in Ukraine. Not overall, but they, as we mentioned several times, they're facing dilemma where if they want to achieve something more in Ukraine, they need to do full-scale mobilization in Russia and get another, 600,000 to 800,000 new troops into the Russian army. So this is apparently not, let's say, viable paths for political reasons in Russia. So they kind of try to play with the cards they have, and they're trying to squeeze what they can with what they have right now, and then eventually there will be situation when they will be forced to make sort of next steps. But we'll get there when we get there. So right now, let's look at what's going on here around Severodonetsk and this kind of salient here. So the northern part, which was threatened by Russian troops, is now quiet and silent. And that's a result because there was a significant group of Russian troops was destroyed here in Bilogorivka and around this bridge, pontoon bridge, that was destroyed several times. And in process, there was quite a bit of Russian equipment destroyed there. So essentially that took the power out of the northern group of the Russian troops, and now it's kind of relatively quiet, let's put it this way. However, the southern group is still actively attacking, and there are new advances that they managed to do today. So first of all, they finally captured village of Orikhovo, and they pushed Ukrainian troops to village Hirske here. So that's the first thing. Here in Toshkivka, they did not make any, they were not successful. They attacked it again, and whatever, like for probably past 40 days they've been attacking it, but they didn't make any progress here. So the more dangerous situation is actually around town of Popasna, which was captured about whatever, like 10 days ago, something like that. So first they made advance towards the north, and it was stopped here by village of Kamyshovaha. Now and then they were stopped, right? So now they're trying to kind of like figure out, they're trying to figure out passes of least resistance, right? Where they can kind of continue moving and advancing. So then they attack towards west, and a little bit like here, we cannot call it like southwest, but basically this southern section, like right south of Popasna, attacked towards west as well, and they breached Ukrainian line, and they were stopped here, right on the border between Luhansk and Donetsk regions. There is a village there, so Ukrainian side is using that village as a stronghold, and that's where they were stopped. Where they stopped here, we're actually not clear. Let's actually look at this section of the front line in sort of a little bit better, so we can have a little bit better picture. So as you can see, this is where they made advance here, the biggest advance, we would say, where they were finally stopped here on the border of two regions, and then the smaller kind of advance that they made to cover the flank of this bigger advance, right? So it's not gonna get hit by Ukrainian side, even though here Ukrainian troops can still hit the flank of this advancing troops, and technically they can hit as well here. So if Ukrainian side had available troops, they could, but apparently they don't. So they don't do that. So the Russian side is clearly advancing here, and this is based on our information is area of responsibility of 24th Brigade. And as we mentioned before, 24th Brigade suffered very heavy casualties in defending Popasna, and it's very clear that it's probably too drained, like lost too many people, too much equipment. So as you can see, overall, if you look at this whole section, it's very clear that their front line is kind of crumbling. It's slow motion kind of disaster, but it's nevertheless it's clearly crumbling, and it probably will need some kind of support eventually, because one of their goals of this advance, it's either this town of Bakhmut, or if they go north, they just want to kind of let's go back here. They go north, they just want to kind of cut it off here, right? So just gonna go there and cut it off here. So enforced retreat of Ukrainian troops from this Severodonetsk salient, right? Or potential encirclement, which, hopefully doesn't happen, because it's obviously extremely bad idea, because then Ukrainian side would lose 57th Brigade and 56th Brigade, which will be very bad. let's put this way. So the situation here is very clear, developing not in Ukrainian favor, and it's very clear that the 24th Brigade needs some reinforcements to be able to stabilize front, because so far, for the past 10 plus days, it wasn't able to stabilize front, and it's getting worse and worse, basically. So there is a situation when the Russian troops will. So it's like in a way it's kind of like exponential situation, right? It's just kind of like small leakage, then it gets big, and then it can get really like flood, right? So this is a situation that's like right before the flood, and this needs to be sealed somehow, otherwise it will turn into flood. Basically, the gates will open, and it will be big breakthrough of the Russian troops. So now let's continue. We're gonna go look. We're not going to look at this section here because there are no offensive action, no defensive or offensive action. There's just artillery shelling. So we're going to look at this section of the front line that's straight west of Donetsk, where the Russian side is trying to also achieve some objectives and actively attacking, as has been actively attacking. So Russian side is making progress here as well, as you can see. So one of the let's actually look at the more kind of like, let's have a closer look. So at first they attacked towards village of Novobahmutivka, and they captured it. Then they kind of moved towards the south, cleared Novosilka Druga, and then now they apparently were stopped. And then again, is like, they're trying to see where their weak where weak defenses are. So they attacked north, and now there's a fighting in the village of Alexandropol, right? So they managed to kind of quite a bit expand this whole area, and at this point, this village here, the stronghold here that Ukraine has, is kind of like under the threat, and probably Ukrainian side will be forced to retreat, just not to be encircled. And there's another strong attack is happening against village New York. That's named after city New York in the US. So this is kind of like, if they manage to kind of break through and capture this will create kind of dangerous situation for Ukrainian troops here. So they will be forced to withdraw or get encircled, and that's not great idea. And let's actually look at the big picture. What's happening here is that why we're saying this sort of slow motion crumbling of Ukrainian front is happening here is because there used to be 79th Brigade, which was pulled towards north to defend Lyman bridgehead. So the front lines of 25th Brigade were stretched, as you can see, and so obviously the density went down. Russian density didn't go down, was still high, or probably they may have received more reinforcements. And by the way, when you see here 1st Army Corps, we don't know what else here, but we're pretty sure there is more here than that. That's for sure. We just don't know exact units that are fighting here, but there are, because 1st Army Corps is not technically part of regular Russian troops. It's part of this DNR sort of kind of creation by basically it's like a Russian occupation administration that created from collaborators this 1st Army Corps, where basically soldiers are locals who want to sort of serve the Russian army, and then the top is from the regular Russian army, right? So the officers are like from the regular Russian army, and then the soldiers are just locals. So that's what this kind of like hybrid structure. But there is actually also regular Russian troops here. We just don't know which ones. But so far, this is another kind of area for concern for Ukrainian side, as slowly but surely Russian side is breaking through defenses here. And the importance and why it's important, because all of this area here, it's contiguous trench lines and strongholds, even like, you know, like concrete bunkers and stuff like that. So this is it's a good defensive position overall for Ukrainian forces, all of this front line here. So it's pretty important to keep it, because, you know, if Ukrainian side will retreat, it's going to be definitely worse position, defensive position, because there won't be, you wouldn't have concrete bunkers or stuff like that. So that's definitely something that needs to be watched. Then the other area of Russian attack is Mariinka and Novobahmutivka, but they don't have any success here. Situation around Vuhledar is stable, because we mentioned it like several days ago that the Russian side captured village Pavlivka, which is to southwest of Vuhledar. Now let's continue. Let's actually maybe mention something about Mariupol, because today there were developments there. It's totally unclear what is going on there. There are different sides of the story. So the Russian side is saying that 300 soldiers from the sort of defending forces surrendered, and majority of them, it seems to be wounded soldiers, and looks like those soldiers are not part of Azov regiment. They're from 36th Brigade, and it looks like there are other regular Ukrainian army units there. Actually, even we're hearing there is a National Guards unit there as well. So they seem to be not from Azov regiment, and based on our understanding that there is about 2,000 defenders remaining there in the city after surrender of this 300. So that's and then it's very unclear what's going to happen for the remaining 2,000, right? Do they plan to sort of surrender? Because this 300 is clearly surrendered, even though Ukrainian side is saying that they're going to be exchanged for Russian POWs, but it's it's very unclear, because you know, knowing Russian side, it may not happen. Let's put this way. So they may end up as POWs. So we'll see what happens with the remaining 2,000 tomorrow. Russian side is threatening to continue, you know, bombing it, and you know, do, you know, shelling, all traditional kind of ways. And there is clear problem in terms of water supply there. That's what we understanding is what is happening there. There is a food shortage and water shortage there. So that's what probably, and obviously medication shortage, that's for sure. So there was a lot of wounded soldiers were dying. So that was putting a lot of psychological pressure on the defenders. And that's probably part of the reason why they surrendered. And it's unclear what the remaining 2,000 are going to do. As we mentioned before, there was time, probably end of March, early April, when they could do successful breakout attempt. And in our opinion, that would have been the right choice. At that point, they already fulfilled what they could do in terms of, you know, draining Russian resources, attacking resources, and this past month was just unfortunately not the sort of wisest choice, you know, to use their resources, you know, those fighters, because they are, I would say, better quality fighters that Ukraine has, and they would definitely need them for to defend the rest, you know, to continue defense of the country. So now let's look at the Zapresia Frontline, which is here. We're going to focus on the eastern section of the Zapresia Frontline, and that's where the Russian side was trying to build southern pincer to accomplish encirclement of Ukrainian troops in Donbas salient. We don't think it's happening at this point, but nevertheless, we're going to discuss this. So the front line is stable here, but what we're observing is First, there was a day ago unsuccessful Ukrainian attack on village Neskuchny here, and then today there was unsuccessful Ukrainian attack again on village Novozvatopil. So there is a clear sign that Ukrainian side is trying to get more, call it, aggressive here. But as we discussed many times before, there is a problem with the ability of Ukrainian army to successfully attack, because attacking is kind of like the top-notch military activity. You really need to be really good, right? So to do that, and so far, what we're seeing that Ukrainian army is not there where it needs to be in order to be successful at attacking Russian forces in a straight way. And partially it was, as we've discussed before, there was Russian air superiority that was preventing Ukrainian troops from attacking. Now it diminished. It's not gone, but we would say it went down quite a bit. There's still, Russian Air Force is still dominating, but they are more, sort of say, nervous, and because of their anti-air weapons that Ukrainian troops have, and they are saturated with that. So that becomes quite a deadly affair to attack Ukrainian troops in a sort of straight fashion. And because most of the Russian aircraft or even helicopters, they have unguided either rockets or bombs. So the only way to successfully attack with high probability of success is kind of like, directly attack, almost like kind of like fly over the head of the troops that you're attacking. And so that opportunity is gone for them at this point. So attacking from far away with unguided weapons yields very low chances of success. So that's why we're saying that opportunities for Russian Air Force are dwindling significantly. In terms of Russian artillery and UAVs, they're still dominating. So they still have a hold advantage, as we discussed. Even though Ukraine received those 90 howitzers, M777 from the US, that's simply too little to make a difference. And they are concentrated in Izyum area, where they're helping, dealing with all of the problems over there. So here they're relying sort of on old Soviet equipment. And then, as we discussed before, Ukrainian artillery severely lacks in terms of UAV support. In terms of that, it's not consistent. Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. And then also what we want to say is that skills are not there. The Ukrainian artillery man is still learning. We have a lot of anecdotal evidence where they just miss, for like 3 times out of 3. And so, and that was from March, so probably things improved, but it still kind of tells you that skills are not there. Versus Russian artillery, they've been practicing always, right? They never had a problem with ammunition, meaning like before war, right? So they practiced, and practice makes you perfect, as they say, right? And so they just possess better, skills, and plus they have this UAV, so they have advantage, right? Overall, and hopefully the more of M777s are coming, they will help technically offset this Russian advantages in skills and in UAV. So that's the situation here. And then let's look at the bigger picture here. Again, this is this wedge that Russian troops built here. At this point, it's very stable. There is no sort of opportunities for Russian troops to move north, and even you can see that Ukrainian army is trying slowly to attack, and unfortunately the attacks are unsuccessful. So then other key points here are, and Ukrainian strongholds are town of Kaminsky, Orikhiv and Gulyai-Pole. And then this Velika Novosilka, which is unclear to us if it's like too big of the village or it's tiny town. So that's kind of like somewhere in between. So those are four forming kind of Ukrainian line of defense, and then obviously town of Vuhledar is another strong, big stronghold here. So that's kind of like what's going on here. And then let's continue and let's see what's going on Kherson bridgehead here. And as we discussed, there is nothing, as we mentioned before, there's nothing happening here. It's all just artillery shelling, and that's all it is. There is no any kind of attacks. There are Russian side is claiming that Ukrainian side is preparing attack here somewhere. We're not, obviously this is just sort of rumors, unsubstantiated by anything. So we'll see if something happens, we'll definitely know and we'll report that. But it doesn't look that Ukrainian side has right now advantage here because there used to be 14th Brigade. We probably created enough potential advantage for the attack, but it was removed from here. It was taken to Izyum bridgehead, as we discussed before. So we actually saying that both sides here on sort of strategic defense. Ukrainian side is happy that they contain Russian troops and they're not moving forward. And then Russian side is happy that they're able to defend this vital freshwater channel to Crimea. So it's kind of like everybody's for now satisfied with what they get. Eventually this will go out of balance, but for now they are in balance. So, okay, that's it for tonight. And until tomorrow, thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.